Hey guys, it's Mina reminding you to download and subscribe to That's What She Said with Sarah Spain. This week, Sarah chats with WNBA All-Star Laisha Clarendon about her oddly specific childhood ambitions and her excitement about playing with #1 overall draft pick Sabrina Ionescu. You can find That's What She Said wherever you get your podcasts. Welcome to the Mina Show featuring Lenny, the only NFL podcast where one of the hosts thinks the Philadelphia Eagles would be more likable if they added a B to the team name. That's Lenny, my dog. He's not here right now, but a member of the Eagles is here. David Lane Johnson, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, I'm surprised you knew that or you looked that up.
David? Yeah, why'd you choose to go by Lane instead of David?
Because my dad goes by David. So he has a different middle name than me, so Lane's my middle name. So
Lane also works a lot better for branding. Like I saw you have hashtag Pave the Lane. Like you can come up with all kinds of fun names with Lane, whereas you really cannot with David.
Hey, yeah, it just rhymes better. Can go a lot better with other things.
It rhymes with a lot of things. Also, like for an offensive lineman, it's all about like clearing rushing lanes. Like it works perfectly.
You got it.
I try. Well, so a couple weeks ago, we had Bobby Wagner, Seattle Seahawks linebacker, on the podcast. So I thought we had to go to the other side of the ball and the other side of the country. It's also Mental Health Awareness Month. Lane and I have had an interesting conversation about mental wellness, his journey there. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. We're going to talk a little bit about football and the Eagles and playing offensive line in the NFL right now. But I will first start by asking, where are you and what did you do today?
I am in Philadelphia, and I have been we had the virtual workouts going, so we've been doing that, racking up the days. And I think I saw on the internet where they may have mini camp or thinking about having it. Yeah. So looking forward to that. But, yeah, worked out today, and that's about it.
You guys are doing, like, virtual workouts, like they're telling you to do stuff, and then you're like, yeah, I definitely did that.
Yeah, so we have, like, our workout manuals. They technically they can tell us what to do because it's all voluntary, but we put the phones in the corner of the room, and they just the eye in the sky. I guess they're in there counting reps, so that's what we've been doing.
How have you been spending your off-season otherwise? Like, have you been watching a lot of TV, getting through Netflix?
Yeah, I mean, they've had good TV recently. They've had Tiger King. They've had The Last Dance. Yeah, they've had some good stuff out. So Netflix keeps me busy. I try to fish a lot when I'm back home in Oklahoma or Texas. So other than that,
it's not good fishing in Philly.
Oh, there's good fishing. It's just I don't have a boat here, so maybe that's a good excuse to go buy one.
Did you watch the show Dave?
Yeah, I watched a little bit of it with Lil Dicky.
I saw you're a big Lil Dicky fan.
Yeah, he's a talented guy. There's not too many rappers, I guess, doing what he's doing, kind of switching back and forth. So he said he's doing, half of the year on acting and the other half rapping. So it's not a bad gig.
I love that show, but I made the mistake of tweeting, I love Dave. The show's so good. Not that into Lil Dicky's music. Honestly, I thought I put it really nicely, Lane, but then the dickheads, that's what his fans call themselves. I'm not calling them dickheads. They came at me so hard. And then he replied to me and he said, Mina, like, I understand my music's old. There's really only 5 to 7 great songs. You'll see when I come out with my new music. So I was actually hoping you could, broker peace between me and the dickheads since you're one of the dickheads.
You just got to stand your ground. That's really it. I think a lot of his fans are in Philly, so maybe a blend of Eagles fans in there too.
I think there are a lot of. I think there's a very large crossover. Eagles fans are relentless. I want to ask you a little about the off season and doing this virtual stuff because I imagine more than any other time in NFL history, this is a time where teams are benefiting from continuity, right? And you're part of this great unit in Philadelphia, this offensive line that has been together for a minute. Now you've got young pup Andre Dillard in his second year stepping up at tackle. But you guys have been playing together for a long time. How much do you think that will help you this season versus other teams that have had more turnover?
Well, I think the continuity is there. So really every day, if we're not seeing each other in person, a lot of guys go to the facility. We're doing the FaceTime thing. So it's a good way to connect. And really, as far as the workouts and the meetings, nothing's really changed. So good thing we have this technology nowadays to be able to help with all that. So other than that, the guys are looking good. We've had lots of time to rehab from injuries, so our team's healthy. We've got the young cats coming in, and I think everybody's looking forward to mini camp so they can have a few days to talk to the guys and maybe get some of the plays in there, review the playbook a little bit before we break for training camp.
Your group knows each other very well. So well, you were comfortable posing in the buff for ESPN, the magazine, the body issue. What year? Was that last year? I think you guys did
last year.
Whose idea was that?
It was mine. I think my marketing guy, I think he got asked about it the year before, and we turned it down. But they were essentially looking for an offensive line group in the NFL, so if it wasn't us, it was going to be somebody else. So we just beat them to the punch.
What was the reaction like?
There's a lot more oohs than ahs.
It's like good for body positive. Like people need to see all shapes and sizes, I feel like.
Hey, they do. Yeah. And especially offensive linemen who they don't ever know who we are. Well, damn it, we're here.
I want to talk about sort of that group, and I know you guys are really tight, which I think is pretty common with offensive linemen in particular, maybe more so than other position groups. You guys kind of like hang together, you go to dinners together, you're the tightest of friends.
Yeah, it's kind of like the movie Heavyweights. So we got our own little fat camp in there. So I
haven't thought about heavyweights in so long.
Yeah, the offensive line is really the misfits in sports where your entire job is about helping somebody else. We spend with the group we have now, we spend countless hours, years and years in the film room, on the practice field. You're eating with these guys every day. You're spending lots of time with these guys. And, what we do, we have some pretty smart and talented guys in the room. And so, with Kelsey, he's been there, I think, the longest, him and JP. So having those guys from day one's really helped, I think, my development and just, even the young guys that are coming in now, as far as their leadership and stuff like that. So, yeah, it's a funny room. I can say that. If there could ever be a sneak peek into our meetings to see what it's like, it's really nobody's safe. Anybody can get called out at any moment. And the thing with football is that, if you messed up because it's all there on film. So there'll be times in practice or games you'll be going through film and you hear guys in the back going, skip it, talking about the next coming play if somebody's getting dominated or something bad happens. So, as hard as it is, sometimes it's very entertaining, and we laugh a lot in the rooms and on the field. So that's always good.
So it's undoubtedly been one of the best offensive lines in the NFL over the last few years. And a line, as you mentioned, has had a lot of continuity. Just thinking about that right side with Brandon Brooks, for example. When was he traded? 2013? How long has he been there? No, that's way too long. 2016.
Here,
16 probably.
16 or 17.
Okay.
Yeah, 16, I believe.
So I know you guys are very close, and that's how we started talking about sort of this topic of mental health in the first place, because Brandon has been outspoken maybe outspoken is the wrong word, but in the past, he has spoken publicly about battling anxiety, having to throw up before games because he's anxious, having to leave. And I think he's such an incredible player. People were kind of shocked by that. And then when you and I were talking, you explained to me, no, this is something that I struggle with as well. And actually something that we've kind of battled together and leaned on each other. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, I think a lot of our the pressure that we have in our life is stuff that we put on ourselves. I think we want to be the very best at what we do. We take a lot of pride in that. It's especially when you put your whole life into this game. So really it's about that. And as far as the anxiety, it's a good motivator. Essentially it's fear. It's a great motivator. But when it becomes to a point where it's distracting or taking away from your life and across the line, then really it's about communicating, because I think as players, as humans, I think we all battle this to some degree. And ultimately fixing it will only help you progress in whatever you're doing. And really, you're not in this alone. A lot of people struggle with this. And, as far as, before games, anxiety, there's lots of guys, dry heaving or take their time in the stalls before games. Just, something they've been doing ever since they were little. So it's kind of baseball players have pregame rituals. So I think ours are just a little bit different.
So it's funny because I think when Brandon said that, most people don't think it's common, but you're saying it's actually like something a lot of people share.
Yeah. There's definitely, lots of guys. Like I said, it varies from person to person. Some is worse than others. I think with Brandon and I, similar, I think we're wired pretty similar. I mean, he's an extreme competitor, and with that, he demands perfection on the field. I mean, that's why he's so good. So, with us, we see it as a burden sometimes, but it's really a blessing. So we take it in stride. We know that, game days are probably we're going to be up, wound up a little bit tight, but, that's kind of that's what makes us, and I guess makes us the players that we are.
When was the first time you remember feeling that level of anxiety or pressure and, tied to football in particular?
Probably when I first got to college, because I went to a JUCO originally and I wanted to go to a Division I school. So just a pressure to, perform well so I can maybe transfer, go to a different school. And then once I've, got to OU, I didn't really play for a few years, but as the years progressed and I got towards my junior year, I knew that I had to make a run for it, as far as playing and playing well. So really that's where my stuff started. It's all been football related, but it's something that, I think really picked up in college just as things progressed.
I think most people think, okay, it makes sense for a guy who's, like you said, was in JUCO trying to get to the next level, to feel that level of pressure and have it turn into anxiety. But people like you and Brandon, like right now, you're a 3-time Pro Bowler. You've been an All-Pro. Most people think, okay, once you've hit that mountaintop, he's fine. He's not feeling it anymore.
That's the illusion. It's all an illusion. I mean, a lot of people put on their poker face, or distract themselves in some way. Really it's something that we all feel, something that we all go through. And really some people handle it differently. Some people internalize it. Some people are able to communicate about it. But I think the biggest thing for me and for other guys is just discuss it, because more often than not, guys on the team are going through the same thing or in professional sports. And a lot of it's just, desire to be great. And like I said, it's a good thing. It can be a blessing and a burden.
Something I think that people around the NFL are aware of, but people on the outside maybe don't know, is the vast difference in personality types between different position groups. These are some of my favorite conversations with DBs or linebackers, like, oh, there's a certain kind of person who plays this, and offensive linemen are a very unique, and I'd say maybe the most unique kind of type of person or type of personality. Do you think some of your feelings or the pressures you feel are also sort of informed by your role on the football field?
Yeah, I would say the O-line position is very, like we talked about, it's a very unique position. And as far as the protection game, if you mess up something like that and the quarterback gets hit or hurt, I mean, that's possibly your season, and it all goes by very quick. So really the main thing for us is learning how to focus, in a distracted world. And I think, our coach has taken that in from day one. I think he understands how players operate. And I think, in the Last Dance, like Phil Jackson, I think you could see how he interacted with his players and how every player was kind of wired differently, and he found out what made them tick. So, there's definitely lots of influences, coaches that can really bring out the best out of you and can really, find what makes you tick and make you perform at your best.
How meaningful was it to have Coach Peterson come out and unequivocally support Brandon the way he has when he's had to leave a game?
I think it was awesome. I think, one thing with Doug is that he's played the National Football League for, 14, 15 years as quarterback. So, as far as understanding players, understanding cultures, he's been in the locker room. He's been around that environment. So as far as his understanding of that, and just really, he knows what kind of, player Brandon is. But I think Brandon's the best guard in the league, and he makes it look easy. And just what he's really come back, from the Achilles injury, which is a serious injury. He comes back. He's the highest graded lineman in the NFL. It's really unbelievable. So, as far as, having him next to me, having Kels, who's been a beast from really day one. But, even when he did struggle, he's always found a way to come out on top. So just far as having, guys like them, Jason Peters, who was, undrafted, now is, is a 9-time Pro Bowler, is going to be in the Hall of Fame. So having got, really guys that have worked hard and come back from stuff, it's a pretty unique to see guys with that kind of will. And I guess, they're just competitors. And so being around those type of guys, I mean, it's been good.
You mentioned how, as an offensive lineman, there's that added level of pressure because you miss one block or something and quarterback gets hurt. It's an added level of anxiety. It's also a position that the average person, I mean, forget the average person, like even a lot of analysts don't understand, right? And like you having a good game, some people might not even know that you had a great game, if that makes sense. There's not the level of, I think, public awareness or perception of it. It doesn't exist. Does that make it harder?
Yeah, I mean, it is what it is. The people that know football or the people that are the people that are paying the money for you to play, they know who does what. So at the end of the day, that's all that really matters.
You talk a lot about sort of the ways you've coped with it, which sounds like largely just by talking about it more than anything to other people you play with. But looking back on your career, what's been the hardest moment, like the moment where you experienced what we've been discussing the most acutely?
Probably maybe my rookie year, just because as a first rounder, a lot of time in your life, whether you like it or not, it's going to be labeled a boom or a bust. It's a thumbs up or a thumbs down to what you are as a player. And so, with what we do, a lot of people in football, they spend their time focusing on their craft and try to get so involved in what they're doing that you don't have time to really think about that. And that drowns out a lot of the noise. But ultimately, it's there. And when it's there, we learn how to deal with it. But like I said, it's a great motivator. I love to have that feeling before every game because it kind of alerts me that I'm ready. Even though
that you're nervous, that you still feel you're like, oh my God.
Yeah. Just, that's a normal part of the game for me now. It's probably the most where I feel the most alive is, before I walk out of the tunnel.
That draft, by the way, I mean, you're 2013, right? Off the top of my head?
Yeah, 13.
So that is a crazy, I mean, looking at that first round, like you talk about thumbs up, thumbs down.
Yeah.
There were a lot of offensive linemen taken that year, right? That was the Eric.
Lots of tackles, lots of guards. I mean, it was a crazy draft.
Do you think it's hard to draft offensive linemen?
I mean, the way it's looking now, it's hard to draft. It's hard to draft anybody. I mean, you just it is a weird process. I mean, a lot of it to do with football, to be honest. I think it's really of how much you're willing to battle because every one of these guys, whatever position you're playing, you're going through the grinder. You're playing against the best of the best every week. It's not like college where, you may have a week off against some opponents versus, NFL where everybody's good.
When you came in, it was Vic, 2013?
Yeah, Vic, and then he got hurt midway through the year.
Then Foles.
Foles came in.
Sanchez.
Bradford. Sam Bradford.
You play for a lot of quarterbacks.
Mm-hmm. Chase Daniel was in there.
Chase Daniel's always in there, man.
Yeah, he's always in there.
The bag king. We respect him around here. Throw some meat to the Eagles fans. What makes Carson Wentz unique? Because you have played with a lot of quarterbacks.
So he's very smart. You can throw the whole playbook at him. And he's one of those guys who's a pretty unique athlete. I think as far as his ability to throw on the run is probably the best in the league. As far as him taking criticism and growing and getting better, man, he gets better every year. And so it's been impressive. It's been impressive watching it.
What do you think is the biggest misconception out there about him as a quarterback?
I don't know. It's something different every year. I think last year was, you can't stay healthy, you can't do this, can't do that. And went out there and, dominated. I mean, I think it spoke volumes, this past year, what he accomplished.
Yeah. You excited? I mean, at the end of last season, you guys finished with basically like, I'm surprised I didn't get a call to come play wide receiver for y'all. Are you excited to add some weapons to that offense, and what should we expect out of it?
We may have a good 4x1 relay team for the Olympics. No, and we really do. We have some speed on the field. Along with a lot of veterans coming back, defense is going to be nasty. So really, it's a good energy. I mean, you can feel it. I think we have a lot of potential. So we're going to make up this time. Now as far as doing the workouts and hopefully the mini camp, we can all maybe get a few days in. But it's excited. I mean, everybody's excited.
People know Von Miller has this pass rush camp for pass rushers. I'm told you host something sort of the opposite version of that for offensive linemen. That's right.
Yeah, it's really with Duke Manyweather who trains guys there in Dallas. I mean, has lots of pro guys, lots of college guys. I mean, that's what he does with his life. So, really talking to him through the years is something that we really just wanted to get offensive line together so we can talk. And so we came up with this idea. O-line masterminds, and it's been successful the past couple of years. Everybody comes in and really just talks to each other. And I think one thing I've talked about is really after games you only have like 5 or 10 minutes to really talk to these guys before you're back on the bus. So really just a way to talk ball, and we're all doing the same thing. So and it's just been a fun weekend. Fun weekends.
You guys don't have like an offensive line group text like the best tackles in the NFL?
We have, I think there's their Instagram thread. Sometimes there's some group texts. Oh yeah, it gets pretty funny in there.
Who's the hardest pass rusher to face right now?
Whew, man, they're all tough. I mean, really, Khalil's up there, Vaughn's up there, Cam Jordan, guys with size. I'm going against Kerrigan every year, DeMarcus in our division. So those guys are two beasts too. So really, all the above.
Are you watching the draft, watching Washington take Chase Young? Like, oh God.
Yep, just another one on the list. I mean, that's the name of the game. The pass rush in the NFL now is unbelievable as far as the guys they have coming off the edge, just how big and are and how explosive. So it's really kind of a new breed of athletes, so it's going to be challenging, in the years ahead. But that's the name of the game.
I want to wrap by just asking you this. I know you're from Oklahoma, right?
From Texas,
or originally Texas.
Groveton.
Pardon me.
Yeah.
Yes. What town exactly?
Groveton. It's north of Houston, probably about an hour north.
Okay. And I hope I haven't been led astray, but I have been told you have an affinity for the farm life.
I do. I grew up in the country, so just something I've been exposed to my whole life. Not a redneck though, so just so we get that clear. But I do like to hunt and fish in my time off. I like to fish a lot, probably more than hunt.
What is the most country thing you used to do growing up?
Well, in Texas and some of the land that you have, a lot of hogs can go in there and really tear up your pasture. So we used to go hog hunting. So that's pretty about as country as it gets.
How did that go?
Well, I have so my two first cousins. I mean, that's what they grew up doing. So they had dogs. We used to go and always caught. So some days you may catch 10 or 15 depending on what kind of day it is.
15?
Yep.
Just like chasing them, or
they catch them. Sometimes a lot of times we'll turn them loose. So it's not like we're killing all of them. So yeah, that's.
This is pursuit on foot.
Yeah, if you get time, go on YouTube and look up hog hunting. So something, yeah, it'll be a weird experience.
How does hog hunting compare to stop and pass rushers?
I would say stopping pass rushers is like riding a bull in the PBR. It's about a little less time for its play, but it's just it's 5 or 6 seconds of just pure damn chaos, and you're trying to control it.
Thanks so much, Lane.
Thanks for having me.
All right, up next, Domonique Foxworth joins the show to help me take some questions from listeners. And then we talk at length about the expansion of the Rooney Rule, amongst other things.
Question. Lenny, for your thoughts.
All right. Thanks, as always, guys, for your incredible questions left in my iTunes reviews. Please remember that Something Kimes reads them all. So, keep it PG. Actually, someone complained, Domonique, about me cussing. It wasn't a question. Really? Yeah.
Don't they bleep? I mean, they bleep it.
They do, yeah. Well, it wasn't cussing so much as it was using some offensive. Anyway, sorry to that man. I'm sorry to that man.
I'm sorry. You sound apologetic, so it sounds like whatever. You must actually feel guilty, because I feel like I would have doubled down at this point if it was just somebody complaining about having to hear bleeps. Then you.
Yeah, no, I feel like so much internet criticism is in bad faith, but something like that, I'm like, oh no, this person actually feels this way. So I genuinely, if it's made in good faith, I mean it. I'm not.
I retract on a tweet not too long ago, or not on a tweet. Really? I called somebody a troll, and then he said, I'm not a troll, but I never actually addressed what was wrong. And then I realized, that's not fair. Just calling somebody a troll is a cop-out. So then I proceeded to undress his awful point and not call him a troll. So we live and we learn.
Troll's not even that insulting, quite frankly. If somebody called me a troll, I'm like, kind of. By the way.
I mean, I said the guy is not a troll, but he does happen to like to roar from under a bridge, which is what he was doing. So whatever.
Maybe you were just talking about Trolls World Tour, which, by the way, when you drive around Los Angeles, that was, I guess, the last movie to be made or something. It's all Trolls World Tour all the time.
No one's paying to take those down and put up something new.
You've probably seen Trolls World Tour. Yeah. All right. Anyways,
damn right. I saw it off the first day, off the rip. I'm trying to buy me a couple hours of peace.
Is that a Disney joint or no?
Nah, it's not a Disney joint.
Then I can make fun of Trolls World Tour. Okay. As always, thanks for questions. Let's get into these. Take a few of them, and then you and I are gonna have conversation after that. Then, as always, I have some questions for you. But first, some questions from listeners. From M. Rodther. Big Lamar Jackson fan, as are we on this podcast. He wants to know if we think that he can emulate Steve Young and kind of pick his spots to run as his career progresses. It's an interesting question, Domonique.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see why not. I think you and I were ahead of the curve on this when we wrote about Lamar when he was going in the draft, and how the issues that a lot of dual threat, air quotes, quarterbacks, because all quarterbacks are dual threat guys now. But the issue that a lot of running, I guess, quarterbacks, for lack of a better term, have is that they have not learned to develop their pocket presence and ability to read defenses and all that stuff, because they've had that kind of dynamic ability to run. That has never been Lamar Jackson. Like Lamar Jackson, if anything, in college was kind of stayed in the pocket a little too long. So I don't see why he wouldn't be able to develop to learn to pick his spots as he becomes a more seasoned quarterback.
Well, I believe this person. I don't know, sort of the intention behind it, but I think he's concerned less about the processing and like the development of his game and more about the health issue, which, I look at a quarterback like Russell Wilson, who has obviously made a concerted decision, and him and the coordinator, to run less as he gets older. I do think that probably does have something to do with longevity. I mean, also Russell Wilson is, such a dynamic passing threat. Well, I guess actually those runs that were going to him are just turning into handoffs. But I don't know. You and I have talked a lot about this sort of issue of dual threat quarterbacks and longevity, and feeling like both that it's overblown as a concern, because most of those quarterbacks, when they get hurt, it's not when they leave the pocket. Right. It's, but also that there's a lot of uncertainty around it. I don't think it's something that's been really, there's a small sample size. I don't think it's something we have a great understanding about, or a large data set.
Yeah. I mean, I think you're right, but I don't think that's the question necessarily. The question is, and maybe we're spending too much time on this one question, but if he can, I think he can, not if he needs to be productive.
He
if he has the ability. And I think there's no reason why he doesn't have the ability. I mean, short of his accuracy concerns, which I think have improved some and hopefully will continue to improve, I don't see anything. In that playoff game that they lost last year, he was throwing some pretty impressive passes even before it was out of reach. There were some drops, and there are a lot of other reasons why they lost, but Lamar's ability to pass is not something that I'm concerned about, and picking his spots with the run.
I think the debate is more should, and I think that is a totally reasonable question to ask. And I honestly wouldn't, I mean, look who his backup quarterback is, RG3. Like he's definitely going to be around people who are going to advise him on how to proceed going forward. I can't imagine this coming season that we'll see him run less, but we'll see.
Yeah.
All right. The Ghost Mom, great name. She was listening to when Mike Golick Jr. and I did a mock draft ahead of the draft, and we talked about, I think he mocked AJ Epinesa to the Bills. I think it was the Bills, but the thinking was like, oh no, pardon me, it was the Falcons. Yeah, I remember, because the thinking was like, okay, maybe this team that has been drafting this sort of super athletic, raw pass rusher should completely reverse their approach and their tendencies and go with like a more technician type player. But her question is, I'm assuming it's to her, how many teams do you think would benefit from going in the opposite direction of their instincts generally when it comes to player acquisition? Well, I mean, like half the league probably, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to narrow it down. I'm sure you can pick out plenty of teams that should probably go the opposite way. And maybe it's just because I'm on your podcast, but like, I'm not sure that I know that anyone has a consistent decision making. Very few teams have consistent enough decision making that I can say that it's like their strategy, except for like the Seahawks come to mind. And it seems like that's one team that goes with a particular type of player and served them well for quite some time, but it may just be because Russell is so good. I'm not sure if I can even think of who else has something that is like, oh, they keep doing it and it doesn't work out.
I guess an example might be like San Francisco likes a certain kind of wide receiver and running back quite clearly. I mean, they're prioritizing certain qualities when they go for those players, but that's Kyle Shanahan. That's what he wants for his offense. But like along those lines, I guess, they're the teams that maybe are, I think the athleticism point is a good one. Like teams that have maybe either underrated or overrated athleticism in the past. Like would they, but again, it depends on the coach.
You have to be good. Like for you to develop something that we know, you have to be doing it for a long enough time for us to care. I mean, the Raiders come to mind because Al Davis was famously like a sucker for 40 times and that sort of stuff. And it seems like that carried on with their draft pick this year.
Right. John Gruden likes old guys. I think actually an interesting example, or sort of relevant, I suppose. We on HQ Today talked a little bit about, there was an article, I think in the Boston Herald, about how Bill Belichick was specifically drafting and acquiring guys this offseason to combat the RPO. New England had been shredded by a couple of RPO heavy offenses. Those offenses also had Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jackson, so I'm not sure correlation. But they pointed out that he had identified a lot of kind of tweener type fast defensive players who could stop the run and cover. Josh Uche, who else was it? Adrian Phillips from the Chargers, whatever. And I think that's actually interesting because you read that and you're like, well, shouldn't every team just have guys who can stop the run and cover? But the problem is sometimes with tweeners, Domonique, like we now have really glorified these positionless players, right? Like Isaiah Simmons or whatever. The problem is they don't always work out. For every Isaiah Simmons, there's like a Mark Barron, right? And it's because sometimes if you're good at a lot of things, you're great at nothing. And I think you need a coach like Bill Belichick who's capable of taking those players and putting them in the right position to succeed.
Yeah, Isaiah Simmons, we're not sure yet that it's going to work out for him like we think it is. I feel like Derwin James is maybe the prototype now in the league for like that guy who can play a bunch of different positions. And if somebody can turn into that, that'll work out. But yeah, I'm not sure. And Belichick has done that all the time where they've had outside or inside backers who step up to be the pass rushers on certain downs and that sort of stuff. I think flexibility is great. Like it makes it, because a lot of times on the defensive side, we're waiting to see the personnel that the offense sends out there before we send out our matching personnel. If you have someone who who can do multiple things, then you don't get stuck in that position and you can kind of have a step ahead in play calling and take away one of the advantages that the offense does have.
Sometimes I feel like a tweener, like in life.
What do you tween?
Tween all these media worlds, man. TV, podcasting, radio. That feels like an offline conversation. Okay, last question, and this sets up our conversation today. DAAL, like doll, like Indian food, maybe. He or she wants to know: do coaching succession plans ever work? Points out like, I think this is a Seahawks person because he mentions Jim Mora after Holmgren, thinks Pete Carroll might handpick someone. And then sometimes he or she wonders, like, if the same quarterback is there, if they're more likely to go with like a coach that they know. I don't think that really happens in the NFL anymore.
Yeah, I was just thinking about college teams where it's worked, like Ohio State seems to have worked out, but it doesn't seem like that's something that happens in the NFL all that much. Like they normally open it up and do a real hiring process, or well, maybe not real process. I'm sure we'll get into that at some point, but they do a hiring process. So I'm not sure that I can't really remember. Was Seifert 49ers from Walsh to Seifert, was that like a planned succession? That obviously worked out. Yeah, I don't know. It doesn't seem like it's a bunch of planned successions. Just kind of, I
remember the last time
it happens and you move on.
It's always been the speculation with New England, by the way, right? That Josh McDaniel, that he had some kind of handshake deal, but I don't know. It's pretty rare these days. Well, and that does, I guess, bring us to our conversation, which is about coaches. You and I have been texting a lot about this latest Rooney Rule news, and a lot, and texting so much that I kind of just wanted to have you on to talk it out with me. I think we first started texting when news broke that they were floating proposals to change the rule, and the one that got the most attention was that teams were thinking about actually incentivizing, or the NFL was thinking about incentivizing teams with draft picks, a third-round draft pick, to, if they hired, I think, a non-white head coach, or there were all these suggestions floated, different draft picks, and all third round though, which then you mentioned in a, I believe, unpublished thing you sent to me that you were a third round draft pick, so it's not that big of a deal. To which I replied, wait, you were a third round draft pick this whole time, Domonique? I thought you were drafted like in the 5th round. So that was news to me.
Yeah,
I'm glad I didn't know that. It's really, it's better that I thought otherwise, I think, this whole time.
I should have gone higher, by the way, if you were asking.
I'm sure. So there's a lot of discussions to be had about this, I think. And then ultimately they did expand the rule, right? Now they're requiring 2 candidates for coaching, a GM, I think like a VP of football ops also, basically just, adding on, asking teams to do more interviews. Setting that aside, and nobody really cared about that. I don't think that caused any sort of, but the draft pick thing did, because, there was a lot of talk about this is demeaning, this is degrading. You had coaches coming out and disagreeing with it. Actually, Mike Tomlin, though, came out today and said he thought it's clearly not working, and that, some sort of incentive, he didn't say this particular plan would work, but some sort of incentive might be good. He mentioned the idea of incentivizing teams whose coaches get poached by other teams. So basically, you put them in a position to succeed, which I do think is interesting. So I want to start with the draft pick thing with you. Because your mind, I feel like, has changed about it a lot. Like you've kind of been based on our text, been on a bit of a roller coaster of opinion.
I don't know that I would agree with that. I think I was wrong with my initial reaction, and then I've been pretty firm in where I feel now. I mean,
so you changed your mind once. Sorry.
I changed my mind once, and I guess the roller coaster is still going, because the more I think about it, the more time we spend on it, like more sure I am about the idea that that nothing's wrong with the incentive program, and maybe they really should implement something even more, I guess, heavy. I don't know, a larger incentive than what they're putting on the table.
Yeah. Well, I want to say first, I don't think what they're putting on the table would work.
Right.
No one's doing anything because of a 3rd round draft pick. Not an additional, again, like moving up 10 spots we're talking about here. That's not anything. Why do you think incentives are the best approach or an approach?
Well, I mean, okay. I think that, I think it's, the way you look at it is, there are people who have had opportunities to make these decisions. And if you assume that the end all be all of making these decisions is the owners of an organization, if you're going to say that what we have right now is a problem, the problem is because of the people who are making the decisions. So you can either change the people that are making the decisions, because I think these are like pretty fully developed people at this point. you're not going to give them some education or change their mind or teach them to ignore whatever unconscious or conscious bias that they have. Like, they are who they are, and they've shown over 50 plus years of NFL football that this is something that they cannot. This is a problem that they can't solve without some help. So, like, if you're not going to change them, which is obviously unlikely, then you need to incentivize them to behave in a way that's more equitable. I don't know how else you address this unless you're going to say that there aren't qualified minority candidates. Maybe you could say that there aren't enough, but I think that there are enough that the numbers should be better than what they are now. And if not enough is the problem, you can address that. But it still seems like the fact that this incentive is even on the table suggests that the league itself believes that there are enough out there. It's just, for some reason, the teams don't want to hire them.
I think both can be true, that there aren't enough candidates and that, even if there were, it wouldn't matter. I think there's still meat on the bone on the pipeline side, right? Especially when you look at the numbers in college and how they're not better, much better. At the tops, right? Because sometimes when you bring this up, people say, well, maybe, former athletes just don't want to be coaches. So, right. That's not true. I'll just say right now, that's not true. I know from reporting on the issue, and there are assistants, and it's a matter of, getting from step A to B to C. There are a lot of people stuck at step A. Obviously, there's been a bias in recent years towards offensive minded coaches who start off as quarterback coaches. This can go back as far as, well, a lot of Black high school players are told to change positions, and that's how you end up with fewer quarterbacks. I mean, this whole thing is so deeply rooted, whatever. So I think there's things that can be done on the pipeline side. It's not worth abandoning altogether. Like when I read about like internship programs, yes, do all that, please. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's important too, because it's not just former players that want to be coaches. I think there are lots of other people who want to be coaches and again, this is deeply rooted, but a lot of minorities disproportionately don't have the ability to take an entry-level coaching job because many of those are unpaid. And because the wealth gap is what it is, you just don't have the opportunity. So I think that being able to finance internships and fellowships and stuff like that, I think is important to help people get their foot in the door.
And a lot of those opportunities are at the lower levels are facilitated by relationships, which then cuts all the way up to the top, where then like the relationship side of coaching and just working at football, period, quite frankly, it never goes away, right? Like these relationships, these ties that we see between coaches and executives in this league, they last forever. And they follow them around. This is why not only, people talk about like sons and, nephews and whatever, and that's a real thing in the NFL, but, this is why like a guy can get fired 10 times and keep coming back. Like it's a very strong factor. I would argue a bigger factor in the NFL, Domonique, than in most industries.
Absolutely.
I mean, you've worked in a lot of different industries at this point.
Yeah. I mean, I think most industries have some structure around them that requires you to go through some sort of hiring process that other people look at and other people participate in. As far as head coaching, all right, once you get the head coach, the coach picks a staff, and he's not involving other people because he knows what kind of system he wants to run and he knows who he trusts. And I kind of understand. I've tried to see this from a bunch of different angles, and I understand if I'm getting my chance to be a head coach, I'm gonna hire the guys that I've known the longest, I trust the most, and I believe in the most. Absolutely. That's another issue of diversity that the NFL, I think, is trying to approach. But you hire those people that you feel like you can rely on. So I can understand that. The problem is, it seems like those people are not from other races or even outside of the bloodline of some of those coaches, and that's a tough thing to overcome.
So I think at the top, there's this question. Okay, so there's the pipeline thing, which we've talked about. And I think most people agree with that or are fine with it. The problem is still there's so much more that can be done. On the issue of the hiring, though, at the top, this is where we come to the question of how do you start moving the needle? Aside from changing the ownership, which is a major issue in the NFL, or trying... Well, actually, hiring people on the executive side is part of this. So how do you move the needle in terms of changing those ties that we've been talking about? And can you change that through, shall we call them soft methods, expanding interviews, expanding access, trying to create these networks artificially in some way? Or is it going to have to be the hammer or, the incentive type thing that we talked about?
Right.
I'm not,
yeah.
And this is where I think we might differ. I'm not convinced that they're like, I think owners and executives generally are so set in their, not just set in their ways, but they don't like to think of themselves as being in the wrong here, like most people. And I'm not sure that an incentive for them would actually work better than somehow finding a way to increase their exposure to these candidates, which again is a very difficult thing I'm throwing out there, right? Someone mentioned to me, who represents some coaches, mentioned to me, well, it would be great if these coaches could interact with the owners at the owners meetings, the off season. I was like, that sounds like a great idea. I do believe, Domonique, that when people are face to face and actually spend time with people outside of their circles, they do start to think of them and it's not changing their brains. It's not making them more accepting, but we just tend to remember people in a certain way.
Yeah, I mean, you're extending the owners more understanding than I think that I have seen them prove that they have, if that makes any sense. So you're essentially making the argument that they just don't know. They just don't know, and if they got around some of these coaches, they would feel more comfortable with them. And I'm not sure I believe that, I guess, is my thing. So
or more
I don't
shame.
disagree with. Yeah,
frankly. It's a lot easier to say no to guys you've never been around.
Yeah, I think that's true, but I don't think the shame is something that that is going to move the needle unless it's shame from a circle of people that they actually respect or care about them respecting them. So I'm not sure that they care that much how we feel about them, or they care that much how other coaches or how coaches feel about them. I think they're, and this is a huge generalization, I'm sure it's different for other people, but I think they care about how people like them in their circles feel about them. And I don't think this is something that when they go to wherever they go hang out, that people are like, hey, it's a shame. In the same way that they would be like, that some of their friends might say, it's a shame that Colin Kaepernick is kneeling. I don't think too many people are putting pressure on them to say, hey, it's unfortunate that you guys haven't progressed as far as diversity is concerned in leadership roles. I
just kind of think through like other examples in history and industries. Why does anyone start expanding their circle or changing or, letting other people in? Usually it's just from exposure. It doesn't mean, I'm not saying.
Or the National Guard. or that.
Yes.
Yeah. So
I don't know. I don't know, Dominic. I guess I want to say it's less almost that I have confidence that would happen, and I'm just so dubious that to me the incentives would have to be so massive to move the needle on this. To a point where I don't think they'll ever do it.
Yeah, I think you're right. The incentives would have to be massive, but that wasn't the question you asked me. Would they ever do it? I mean, the question you asked was like, how do you get some action out of this? I think maybe it's unlikely that they would make the incentives big enough that I think that, because what it boils down to is in their minds, I think that they believe that they have some ability to pick out the next great coach. And by incentivizing them to choose somebody else, you would have to give them a huge incentive for them to be convinced that their special ability to pick out a coach is not worth as much as the incentive, which that's not going to happen unless you give them a first round pick or something.
Let me come at this another way. We keep talking about the owners, but this isn't only about the owners.
Right.
Like, it's not like the owners are just like, hey, I met this guy, Joe, no, there's
Joe Judge.
There's Bill Belichick likes him. There's executives involved, and the vast majority of those executives are white, and the ones who are doing the interviewing, right? And it seems to me that I know that this new rule they're talking about, expanding interviews at least for the GM, I think the top 2 jobs. But it seems like there's like we talk about pipelines and interviews and access on the coaching side. It seems to me that they just need to be equally aggressive on that side if they want anything to change.
Absolutely. I think they should be, because like we focus on the coaches because those are the names that we see and we talk about a lot, but this is also meant to help the GM pipeline. But I do think that the reason why it always comes back to the owners to me is it's hard to believe anyone is sincere about some diversity. It's hard to believe anyone's sincere about anything is if it's not reflected in the very top levels of leadership. So it's hard for me to look at this league that has been 60 to 70% black for, the last however many years, a long time, as far back as many of us can remember. And they've never had any effort to court or groom some black ownership. I think it's hard for them to then say that we really care about diversity.
Let me ask you a question. What percentage of the NBA's owners are white?
All of it?
Except for Jordan, right?
Yeah, Jordan. Yeah.
So I realize that that's a very fraught comparison because it's different kinds of owners and the culture of the sport is so different. But I do think it's interesting, instructive, and important how much less of an issue this has been in that league.
Yeah.
Despite the fact that they've not accomplished anything at the top. I mean, they're not accomplished, but you know what I mean? Despite the fact that they have not moved the needle at the top either.
Well, I agree with you. I'm not certainly going to sing the praises of the diversity of the NBA owners, but one is a lot more than zero when your league. And I think basketball has been filled with, until kind of the European influx, there's been a lot more black basketball players than black football players as a percentage of the league. But I do think that the NBA is different in that, the belief of what a coach has to be in the NBA is very different from the belief of what a coach has to be in the NFL, if that makes sense. So I think that also the quarterback thing is important. There's a leadership role in football. It's the quarterback, and it's historically been a position that's dominated by a white person or white male. And historically, the leadership role in the NBA team is just the best guy on the team, which has been, so I think that transition and perception is a little different, where you can all right, we can have the team leader be a black person when the team leader on the field or on the court is a black person.
It's just interesting. I think when you think about it, you just realize so much of it flows upwards from the players and the players, how empowered they are and who's empowered and what that means. Right. It's an interesting conversation. Okay. I promise I wouldn't take a ton of your time. I could keep talking to you about this forever. But I'll just wrap with one question, I guess. Do you think this is going to get better?
That's a tough question.
What do you think it would take?
Yeah. So, the tough thing is we've had situations in the past where the numbers were much better, but it seems that overall things haven't really changed. So that's why.
Isn't that interesting though? Isn't that interesting? That I want to pause you there. That the numbers, what was it, 8-4 now? You think, okay, we got these guys. They're developing, ostensibly networks and trees below them. I guess many were not in place long enough somewhere, in case of Marvin Lewis, obviously always gets trotted out as an example. But it's interesting how tenuous it is.
Yeah. I think it's a complicated thing that we can't figure out. And I feel like we covered a lot more ground on our text message than we were able to cover in this short conversation. But I do think that discourages me because there's always a reason or a pull to revert back. I want to believe that the arc of history bends towards justice, but somebody's got to pull on it. And if no one's going to vote for any proposals that are going to pull on that arc, then I feel like it's likely to snap back to where it was. I
will say one thing that you and I have talked about a little bit, and I think we might not exactly see eye to eye, is the role of shame in all of this. And maybe it's just, I don't know, coming from business journalism and thinking about how do you generally force companies or incentivize them to actually change anything, right? I don't think the NFL has been shamed on this. I think, I know it, we know people who talk about it, right? But when I see the discourse around it, I see how infrequently it's brought up. I see it's not brought it, enough of a topic. Yeah, it's not like the NCAA and college athletes where like everybody gets it now. You know what I mean? Right. Like everyone gets like this issue is so far from there, and I think if it actually does get there, it would make a big difference.
I hope so, maybe, but I mean, I'm hard pressed to find examples of where public shame really influenced the way that the league operated in any significant manner. Like it's hard for me to get to that point, especially coming on the heels of Kaepernick. Like that was everywhere, and I guess there were some people who were on the other side of it, but I think by and large, the media who controls much of this and the people on the coast where the predominant source of money and income is for the NFL. Like I feel like that, and maybe I'm making assumptions, but like that didn't move them there. And then we can go to a whole host of other things. The one thing I could think of was, it wasn't even shame necessarily. Like I remember when I was playing, when we shift, just like off field issues. And when the league and the commission, they switched from Tagliabue to a Goodell, and they got a lot more aggressive on player discipline. But that wasn't about shame as much as it was about fear that their product was going to be viewed as a product full of criminals, and that they would not be able to sell this to companies. So like, I don't think shame matters nearly as much as money or incentives or pressure does. I wish it did, but I don't think it does. Because they're nameless and faceless too. Sorry, this is last point. I promise.
No, you're right. It's a unique structure that way. Because by the way, by all accounts, Roger Goodell would very much like this to change. Like, you know, the resistance here is not coming from the NFL, and I think that's what is tricky.
And that's the perfect like encapsulation of what shame can do. Shame can, because Roger is the guy who takes all the shame. Roger's the guy who takes all the abuse. So it could make Roger want to do something different. But all the other guys who own teams no one's shaming them. And they all, if somebody in their circle is shaming them, they're like, well, that ain't me. That's those other racist owners. I would do it. It's just, I had this perfect candidate fall into my lap. Well,
maybe then we need to focus more on the actual owners there. And, you know, there's so few that people actually can name, right? Like other than Jerry Jones. And all right, let's end as always with a few questions.
And now it's time for Dinks and Dunks. I'm getting paid for this, right?
Domonique, I'm going to start with a football question. I answered this for one of our insider panels, and I'd be curious to hear your answer. Who is a dark horse MVP candidate?
So 2 weeks ago, I picked Kyler Murray, and
he's not a dark horse anymore.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. That was my dark horse MVP candidate, but that horse is no longer dark. Oh, that's a great, that's a great metaphor coming off the heels of our last conversation. I don't know. Maybe I'll go with my man Dak. Who else?
I don't think he's a dark horse either. I think he's a betting favorite.
Yeah. So who is the dark horse? Somebody left.
I wanted to take Matt Stafford, but someone else did. I thought that was a fun pick.
Stafford. Other one, Matt Ryan's a good.
Yes, Matt Ryan's always a good dark horse. I thought Phillip Rivers was a really long shot pick that I liked, just to have a wild comeback season. So
all quarterbacks.
Yes, that's how it goes. All right. We talked about Trolls World Tour. What's the best kids movie you've watched throughout all of this? Or kids content?
Sheesh, that's tough.
For the dads and moms to listen.
For all the dads and moms. So to be honest with you, I'm sure all the dads and moms would understand. It doesn't matter whether it's good. The best content is whatever keeps them locked in for an hour or two. So I normally would go to the movies with them and watch the movie because I go with them. But now it's like, turn it on and I'll go to another room and do nothing.
Are your kids just watching way more TV than before?
Oh my gosh, screen time.
Every parent I know has completely just given up. All the rules are gone.
Oh yeah, we stopped keeping track. We used to be like, all right, that's enough iPad, but now it's like, knock yourself out, kid.
Drain that battery. All right. Along those lines, I was kind of wondering, what is an average day for you like these days?
Oh, it's funny you should ask. So like. Today has been interesting. So like I alarm went off 5:45, get on the Get Up pre-show call, and then go do Get Up for 2 hours, and then I hosted First Take for Stephen A for the following 2 hours. So that was 4 hours. Yeah, I'm doing that all week, and then I came home, and because my wife had been taking care of the kids and getting them through their school all morning, like, I want to give her a break, but I also feel like I need a break. But nope, I came in and then jumped right in to help my son with a project, and my oldest daughter can handle her school all by herself, but then do yoga with my youngest daughter. And then I started to read some articles to prep for the shows tomorrow. And then I got a text from Mina saying, hey, time to do that pod. And then I hopped on the pod, and my son was like, let's play tag. So I said, we got it. 30 minutes, we're playing tag. So I'm going to go play tag from here, and then I'm going to write up my notes for all the shows tomorrow and email those in, and then hopefully not pass out.
Get
ready for tomorrow morning. Get up again, 6 a.m., baby.
That sounds like a lot. I really try never to complain in front of my parent friends about work, especially if it's during a time.
The thing is, if I had more free time, if I didn't have kids, it's not like I would feel it the way that you feel your free time. So, like, you probably work just as much or just as hard as me. It's just you spend 90% of it on work, and I spend 50% on kids and 50% on work. So I sympathize with you because you are a tweener.
Do you know what though? Lenny does take up so much. Now, this is really what I don't do, is bring up my dog when people talk about their kids. But once I tell you this story, you will understand. The other night, Lenny, I don't know what he ate. Oh, should I tell this story? Whatever. So it was like 4 a.m. and all of a sudden I hear him going, I'm like, no, do not throw up on the bed, because he sleeps on my bed. And I just got up, and it was like his eyes were glowing in infrared, in the dark. And I could see him heaving, and I knew he was going to puke on my comforter. And it's really hard to clean. So I was like, I don't want to wash this. Domonique, what do you think I did?
You caught it in your hands like a G.
Yes, I did.
Yeah, nothing wrong with that.
Felt like somebody was pouring soup, like some more soup.
That is, so none of your parent friends that you don't tell the stories for, none of them will be repulsed by that. You got to do what you got to do. You know how many times in this last couple of weeks that I've had to clean some sheets or clean some poop or it is what it is, man. You get dirty. You just make sure you don't get it under your nails, because that's hard to get it out from under there.
Last question, always from Lenny. The other day I found, I don't have nails. I found that picture of us, the morning roast from, I want to say it's from like 2017, maybe, right? So it's not even that old. I was like, look, babies. It's really not even that old. Yeah. But I was feeling nostalgic, and I showed it to Lenny, and he said, wow, look at those young rising stars. Domonique, did you ever think Mina's dog would have a podcast before you?
Absolutely. I knew it would happen before me. I don't want no stupid podcast, and I don't want no stupid hat either. Keep that hat, keep your shirt, keep your podcast, keep your dog. I hope he throws up on your bed tonight.